Story I've mentioned a couple of times is the front page of one of your newspapers this morning, the Daily Mail. Firemen with just 6 days of first aid training, I'm sure they mean firefighters, by the way, are being dispatched to thousands of medical emergencies. Now, the problem here for me, more important is what it means for you, of course, is the 6 days of training. Because I think, and I'm sure one of my contributors will be able to tell me, but I think in other countries, European countries such as France, it's quite commonplace for the equivalent of their firefighters to do this sort of thing. But you must give them the correct training. Crews dealt with 44,000 call-outs last year that would normally have gone to paramedics, a rate of 120 a day, and 4 times the number as in 2010. They've treated patients who've suffered cardiac arrests, strokes, fits and heavy bleeding. Fire brigades are stepping in because of a surge in demand caused by the ageing population and difficulties in making GP appointments. Ambulance services are also struggling to recruit paramedics. At the same time, calls to the fire service have fallen because of major advances in prevention and safety. Well, they're a victim of their own success, aren't they? They're the firefighters, so they are to be applauded for that. But it is this aspect of the training, just 6 days training, which is of some concern. The practice is raising concerns firefighters are being used to stop the clock and ensure ambulance services hit response time targets. In Kent, records from the end of November show fire crews were sent to between 9 and 16 medical calls a day, including unconsciousness, breathing difficulties, back pain. Well, that's a bit much calling for an ambulance. You've got a bad back, isn't it? Back pain and using a defibrillator. A whistleblower who works for Kent Fire and Rescue says firefighters don't have the qualifications. Staff had just 6 days of basic aid. The whistleblower says it's just so wrong. It's putting people at risk of fires. If a pump is off the road and there's a house fire nearby, then there's no one to attend to it for far too long. We only have a certain amount of kit. Well, Martin Berry is Trustee and Director of Communications at the College of Paramedics, a paramedic himself and Senior Lecturer in Paramedic Science at Oxford Brookes University, and joins me now. Isn't this in some ways just putting us in line with other parts of Europe? Good morning to you.
No, it's not putting us in line with other parts of Europe. The services in, I heard you used France as an example, are slightly different, where there's a far more of a culture of combining the fire and rescue services with the ambulance service. They tend to be one and the same service. Most people sort of would think of the United States and New York as an example of that. It is a little bit different, but this idea of sending firefighters to patients presenting with the most extreme of medical emergencies, a cardiac arrest, where the heart is effectively not being able to pump enough blood around the body, or patients who are high risk of going into cardiac arrest, they want to get that patient a defibrillator. And if a firefighter who has a defibrillator in their hand is nearer to the patient, then we should be sending them.
So you in agreement with this practice?
I am absolutely in agreement. And what would be absolutely heartbreaking is if the focus of attention is drawn away from the main point, which I have worked alongside some truly remarkable people in the fire service, and I have myself been involved in attending patients who have had a cardiac arrest in the street, say, and a fire service resource was sent because they were nearer. They've managed to restart the hearts with a defibrillator, and then me bringing my paramedic skills with the ambulance service, we can then stabilise, transport that patient to hospital, and that patient is walking out the hospital in a few days. It's truly remarkable, and that needs to be the focus.
What's the level of training, though, that these firefighters should be given, would you say?
So the issue we have is what that patient needs is that defibrillator. And that defibrillator, I don't care. As a paramedic, I am not precious about who gives that patient that defibrillator. It can be a fire service firefighter, or it could be your local greengrocer. I don't mind. What that person needs is a defibrillator. They're incredibly easy to use, and actually we can tell people how to use them over the phone. And if the defibrillator is in a shop or a high street, then that's even better. That works great.
So 6 days training is okay?
The problem,
I mean, obviously it's better than no days training. I hear what you say about the greengrocer, but it does seem rather little, a rather small amount.
You could not argue that more training for anyone is a good idea. However, the issue we have, and the examples being used in this article, is where firefighters are turning up, where the information given over the phone suggests that patient is in cardiac arrest or high risk of cardiac arrest, and it isn't presenting to be that the case. And what NHS England, with their colleagues in Scotland and Wales, have been working on is changing the way that we categorise calls and giving the call taker of the ambulance service a little bit more time to try and figure out exactly what is going on before they dispatch the resource. And what we're hoping to see, and the evidence is very, very strong, that will improve the situation and stop the number of calls being sent to the fire service and actually focusing on them on the patients and the cases that they are really needed.
Martin Berry, thank you. You're Trustee and Director of Communications at the College of Paramedics. You are a paramedic, as you mentioned, and you're Senior Lecturer in Paramedic Science at Oxford Brookes University, 11 after 8.